All right, guys, so we got an absolutely wild debate here between Tim Pool and Adam Conover on free speech in the United States, specifically as it pertains to Donald Trump arresting and trying to deport students who are here in the country legally, but who either protested or spoke out against U.S. complicity or their university's complicity in the ongoing genocide in Gaza. Now, I don't watch a lot of Tim Pool, but I think that he's one of these conservative commentators who likes to tout themselves as being pro-free speech and America first and anti-war and all of those things. And as you're going to see throughout this debate, he completely contradicts himself on all of those points and sort of backs himself in to an impossible corner here. So let's go ahead and jump into this and try to work our way through.
Well, look, hey man, I'm a free speech guy, right? I think that something that's nice about America is that we're a country that has that value, and that we don't generally think that you should be tossed into a van and kicked out of the country for expressing an opinion. I think that it is a change. I think it's a change in America to most people around the world to feel that, oh, wait, if I go to America and I express a mild opinion about their foreign policy in my own student paper, or maybe on a stage or maybe somewhere else, I could be, without any warning to me, accosted by 6 people on the street, thrown into a van, and taken out of the country.
Oh, come on,
right? Let me finish. I think that's a strain. I think that's a new idea for a lot of people, that America is that type of country. I think that Donald Trump's purpose is to turn America into that type of country. I think that that's bad. I think it makes the country smaller. I think it makes the country worse. I think it's a violation of most of the values that I grew up with as an American, and that's my view of what's happening in the country. Now, if you want to say, hey, I don't like free speech for foreign nationals who are in the country who express mild opinions about other countries' foreign wars, then that's your prerogative. It's a big difference between us that you don't like free speech in that way.
I mean, that's loaded language, right?
Yeah, all the language you're using is pretty loaded.
Well, you keep using adjectives to describe things to diminish one thing while exacerbate or exaggerate something else.
I do use the English language to express my thoughts and opinions. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's straw manning. It's not a legitimate attack of the ideas, right? So accosted on the street. Come on.
Okay, maybe this is a little bit petty, but just to clarify here, in terms of the word accost that Tim has such an issue with here, number one, it's not an adjective, it's a verb. Here's a definition of it. It's to approach and to speak to somebody in an often challenging or aggressive way. That's a definition of the word that Tim Pool is taking offense to there. Now, if you've seen the video of the person they're talking about here, Romeja Ozturk, this is just an accurate way of describing what happened to her when you had, I don't know how many, I mean, at least half a dozen, masked up, unmarked immigration authorities who ran up to her randomly on the street, threw her into an unmarked car, and then took her off for the crime of writing an op-ed. And I'll link this down below if you guys want to go read the entirety of it. She was one of the co-authors on an op-ed at Tufts University where they were basically calling on the school to abide by several Senate resolutions that were passed by their community union that were asking the university essentially to divest from Israel, to end their complicity in the genocide in Gaza. And this is what she was arrested for, right? So keep that in mind. We're not talking about somebody who was violent or they were convicted of some sort of criminal action or anything like that. She was a co-author on an op-ed that was pretty mild in its criticism of the United States, but trying to get their university to end their complicity in the genocide of Gaza, right? So that's the context of what they're talking about here. And we can go ahead and continue as we work our way through.
She was arrested. Okay. She was arrested by a relatively large group of men compared to what a normal arrest would require, which I think they didn't need to do and was silly. So we can say she was arrested by several men, unmarked, or plain clothes, which didn't need to happen. But I don't need to say like she was accosted by men on the street and like it was about a mild opinion. It's like, okay, listen, the facts of the case, like I said, I don't like the idea that people come to this country and then try and tell us how to do, how to live our lives.
You're not for free speech. I understand.
I think American citizens have self-determination and sovereignty. And I will say this even of the Canadians who keep coming here and they keep getting involved in our politics. I'm friends with some of them. But I think it's fair to say that there is an issue with Canadians, largely conservatives, who come to this country and then start advocating for conservative values in a country they're not from. So to be fair, there are liberals Canadians who do it too. I find it to be silly. That being said, Canada as a bordering nation with a largely overlapping culture is a morally different question, but still applies in much the same way principally. So I do take issue with foreigners coming to my country.
It's a nice white country, so we like it.
Canada's, they call it what, the most multicultural country in the world, I think. Mm-hmm. They big on immigration. I think Toronto is considered to be the most multicultural city in the world. Yeah. So Canada actually is, you can call it a nice white country. That's technically the truth, but it also is very, very much in favor of immigration and diversity and all these things, largely what many of the conservatives are coming here speaking out against. But without.
Okay. Again, so is Tim's argument here that, and I don't know if he has some sort of beef with like Jordan Peterson or Steven Crowder or any of these other conservative Canadian / American commentators, but I think that's who he was referencing here. So is he saying that, let's say under the Biden administration a few years ago, that he would have defended or he would have been okay with Joe Biden arresting, black bagging, and then deporting Jordan Peterson from the country for being against the Biden administration's policies? Is that what we're saying here? I don't think. Maybe I'm, missing something here, but I really don't think Tim would have defended that if that had happened under the Biden administration, right? It's almost as if he has to defend the Trump administration and everything that they do because of, I don't know, maybe it's a little bit of audience capture, or maybe this is just ideologically where he is. But again, find it hard to believe that he has a consistent, principled stance on that if it had happened to a conservative under a Democratic president. But we can continue here.
So this is a country where if you're from another country and you're in America, don't say anything about our politics, or you could be forcibly removed from the country. You're comfortable with America being that kind of country. That's something that's like that's a value of yours. Those are your values.
See, you're doing it again.
No, I'm trying to understand what you actually believe.
Yeah, I'd say marginally it's a good.
Because I think that's a point of distinction. Like it's useful in a conversation like this to be like, okay, I have my value, you have your value, and my value is like I really like it when people say what the fuck they think about any country's politics.
We can simplify it. My value would just be, to whatever mathematical degree, American sovereignty supersedes the right of foreigners to speak about our policies.
To whatever mathematical degree, whatever the fuck that means in this context, American sovereignty supersedes the ability of foreign nationals to speak out against U.S. politics. That's the gist of what he just said there. Let's try to break that down. Again, mathematical degree, what exactly does that mean in this context? But move forward to the other part of that. He's trying to make the case that the arrest and the deportation of somebody like Mahmoud Khalil or somebody like Rumeja Ozturk is justified because it, in some way, shape, or form, violates American sovereignty. Violates American sovereignty because she wrote an op-ed that was critical of a genocide that our government is complicit in. Keep in mind, Rumeja's position on this of divestment or, let's say broadly an arms embargo on Israel or ending U.S. complicity in this genocide is a position that's supported by a majority of the country, right? A majority of Americans, American citizens, are not, virulently pro-Israel in the way that I guess Tim Pool is in this situation. So Rumeja Ozturk and Mahmoud Khalil and other people like Mohsen Madawi, they're actually in alignment broadly with the American people on this issue. So I guess the stretch of the imagination here from Tim Pool is basically the same justification that the Trump administration is using. Keep in mind, the legal justification that they're trying to put forward to justify throwing these people out of the country and arresting them and detaining them for extensive periods of time is that they are somehow a threat to the foreign policy interests of the United States of America, and that Marco Rubio, as the Secretary of State, has the unilateral right, without any question, to decide that they are that threat and then to throw them out of the country. That's the weaselly, very thin legal justification that they are trying to give to explain all of this. And Tim Pool seems to be in agreement with that. Absolutely bizarre.
But in this case,
but that's my value.
So you think that literally any time America is exercising its sovereignty, that's like a good thing in that particular case? Like, because
what does that mean?
Like,
you're a guest in with all due respect, I think I said it like 6-7 times. You're a guest in our country. Adhere to the rules. That's it. That includes conservative Canadians, conservative Brits. That's Carl Benjamin. That's Paul Joseph Watson. That's Viva Frei.
So adhere to what rules exactly? Because again, Rumeja Ozturk, Mahmoud Khalil, Mohsen Madawi, none of these people violated any laws. Right? It's the Trump administration that's now come in over the top and is using, some legal justification from 50 years ago to try to say that Marco Rubio has the right to unilaterally throw them out of the country. But what rules did they violate? These are arbitrary new rules that people like Trump and people like Tim Pool are putting forward that usually are not in place in this country. These are not some long established precedents that anybody who's a foreign national in the country who speaks out against anything our government does gets tossed out. That's not the norm, right? This is what you guys are trying to impose with this new policy.
That's Seth Rogen. And it's also
so all those people should not speak about American national interests, like the Suez Canal. We shouldn't
While
say,
here on a
the
temporary
Panama
visa.
Canal, or like,
While
of course,
here on a
Puerto Rico a
conditional
state or not.
visa.
They should not speak about American politics.
You can speak about what you want, but speech has consequences.
I mean,
Doesn't it?
okay, so we can move on. I'll say to me,
So you can't speak about what you want, right? What a bizarre, like, double speak there. You can say whatever you want, but it has the consequence of you being arrested, black bagged, detained for weeks, if not months on end, and then thrown out of the country. Okay, so then you can't speak on whatever you want, right?
that's a radically different America than I thought I grew up in. And I think it's fucked up that we're becoming that kind of country. I think it's really
believe you
bad.
think that's true.
Yeah, you don't believe I think that's true?
Well, I mean, I suppose
Like what I just said, I believe. You're like, you don't believe that.
Well, because if we go back several administrations, that's not been the case ever. I mean, look at New York in the 2000s when the Bush administration rounded people up. And well, I'm sorry, it wasn't Bush, during the Bush years, and they put 200 people in like a bus. They locked them in a bus cage.
Yeah, that was bad.
That's the country you grew up in. The idea that
and it
these
was
things
bad.
haven't been happening. George Carlin got arrested for swearing. We had blasphemy
and it
laws
was
on the
bad.
book.
Yeah,
You
and it
actually
was
are
bad.
claiming
And then we
Indeed,
said,
and you
we
grew
shouldn't
up
do
in
that
nation,
anymore.
and it never changed. The idea that you think you grew up in a nation where you could say whatever you wanted is an absurdity. George Carlin went to jail for swearing.
And that was good, you think?
No,
because
it wasn't.
you think it's good that Rumeysa Öztürk is being forced
She's
to
not
leave
a
the
citizen.
country. So
she's on a conditional visa as conditioned by the INA and the existing administration and the will of the voters.
okay, but you're arguing.
No. My argument
you're
is
arguing that
you said the
Öztürk's
country I grew
deportation
up
makes sense
in.
because George Carlin was arrested for swearing.
No, you said I grew up in a country with free speech, and I said no, you did not.
And
It's never been true.
And you're like, okay, yes, you're right. So under your view, America is a country that doesn't have free speech, never had free speech.
Yes.
And that's a good thing.
No.
Because we're exercising our sovereignty.
No.
Okay, but you think it's a good thing that Rumeysa Öztürk doesn't have free speech?
You understand the distinction between a non-citizen here on a conditional visa and an American citizen being arrested for swearing?
I understand that there's a
Very
distinction.
different
I don't think
circumstances.
that either of those people should be treated differently in that case.
Let me say this.
I don't agree
This
with you,
country
man.
has never had free speech.
Okay, I think
It's a fact.
Again, just bizarre, incoherent arguments coming out from Tim here. This is sort of like if I were to start criticizing January 6th, right? And to say that I think it's a bad thing that Donald Trump tried to overthrow a democratic election, right? And then somebody responds to that by saying, well, we've actually never had democracy in this country because look at Citizens United and look at the corrupting influence of billionaires and corporate interests in our political system. It's like, yes, that's true. And I agree with you that we are much closer to something like an oligarchy than a democracy. But January 6th was still bad. And trying to directly overthrow a democratic election is still anti-democratic. It's still bad. So to bring up like the fact that George Carlin was arrested or these other examples of violations of free speech throughout history that he cites here, and then to simultaneously claim that you think those were bad, but in this situation, in regards to Rumeysa Öztürk and Mahmoud Khalil, this is a good restriction of free speech because they're not citizens. I mean, all of this is just absolutely bizarre and incoherent. Let's see how Adam continues this.
When the founding fathers finalized the Constitution,
do you think we should have free speech?
Yes, but there are limits on what free speech is based on the moral worldview of the individual argument. For instance, do you believe someone should be allowed to direct someone to commit a violent crime?
That's
Yes or
not
no?
that's not the moral worldview of an argument. That is the effect of the speech. So you think that
hold
you
on,
think that
hold
whether you have free speech should be your words should be based
I'm
on the
trying
moral
to-
worldview of the argument.
So to understand
certain
your view of
arguments-
what free speech means, I'm asking you a question. If somebody says explicitly, you right now commit crime to that person, is that free speech?
Someone says you right now commit crime to that person, and what did they do it?
Yes.
I mean, I guess I'm not a free speech scholar, but like that is there's probably be legal consequences for that free
It is
speech.
illegal to do that. Do you think someone should be able to yell fire in a crowded theater?
I mean, this is the canonical example of a speech that's not free speech. So
It actually is. That's Brandenburg v. Ohio. It is, in fact, legal speech. I don't think people should. I understand the Supreme Court's ruling on that issue. The challenge with free speech, let's go back to the beginning of this country. Blasphemy laws were on the books after they even had the First Amendment.
so
They literally said you can't blaspheme. We would say that's not free speech, but how did you have a First Amendment if you arrested people for blaspheming? My point is, and this is an anarchist philosophy, the laws of the country are dictated by those with the power to enforce it. That's why it used to be illegal to put a pie on your windowsill, but even though it's still illegal, nobody arrests you for it. So free speech does change throughout the generations. We never grew up in an era, we never had a time in our lives where you had true free speech the way the absolutists want it to be.
Why does it seem like Tim is just utterly terrified of outright saying what he thinks should be the case? Right? Okay, it was once illegal to put a pie in your windowsill. Okay, I think that's probably a bad thing, right? It was once illegal to blaspheme. I think that's a bad thing. I think that's anti-free speech. We've moved on from that. Maybe we shouldn't do that again, right? Again, he's completely avoiding the specifics of the situation we're talking about here. The question of the arrests of Rumeja and Mahmoud and Mohsen and the rest of the students around the country who are being cracked down upon, this is about whether or not students in general, because this has happened to American citizens as well, but in this specific case, we're talking about foreign nationals, do they have the right to criticize the fact that our government is active and their universities are actively complicit in an ongoing genocide? What do you, Tim, think about that? Do you think they should be thrown out of the country for criticizing a foreign government? Right? Mr. America First, you think they should be thrown out of the country for criticizing the actions of a foreign government? Do you think that's good? Do you think that's bad? Do you think that's anti-free speech? Is it pro-free speech? Or are you just going to keep going through 200 years of the history of the First Amendment in this country without ever explaining what your actual position is? I mean, it's goofy.
Yeah, I'm talking about the story that we tell about ourselves as a country, man. I'm talking about I'm talking about the values that we have collectively as people. And of course, those are always changing a little bit, and people are trying to pull them in one direction or another.
Split in half.
I would have thought, that like, I don't know that much about you. I know you're very involved with Occupy and stuff like that and protest movements, which I think is cool work. I would have thought that like a student writing an op-ed about another country's war and her own institution's support for it, vis-a-vis our country's foreign policy, would be the kind of thing that you would think is a sort of free speech that we should value. That is the kind of free speech that I think, I personally think like a lot of the idea of America is built upon. I think it's one of the good things about the country, that this is a country where you can come here and you can express your opinion mildly in the newspaper.
What happened at Kent State?
And I think Kent State was bad.
My point is,
I
there's
think
things
it was
we
bad,
wish
man.
America was, but I kind of feel like a non-citizen
But this one you
getting
said you
deported.
think is good. You're not sitting here going, man, yeah,
She
that's
got
a bummer.
deported, dude. What are you talking about? She didn't get shot in the face. A conditional visa was revoked. I'm not crying about it. I don't care.
I mean, I think she cares. I think
That's
her
too
family
fucking
cares.
bad.
I think the people of her university care. I think
Change the law, man. This is a marginal issue for a single person who was in violation of the INA as it's enforced by a government that was elected by a popular majority, or I should say by a plurality, but the popular vote. So let me pull this up, because this is what we were talking about earlier. This is RCP from April 22nd. Every age bracket, to be fair, 40-49 is a tie, but Real Clear Politics aggregate shows from all of the latest polls, 70 plus is the only age group that has a negative view of Trump's job.
Okay. I'm just trying to...
This is a popular majority.
I'm just trying to make sense of your position around free speech, because you agree with me about all the past things in America that you're talking about. Kent State, you're talking about George Carlin and all these other things, and these were bad abrogations of free speech.
Indeed, deportation is not a murder. You're going home. I'm giving you a ride home.
But
if you came to my house, I let you in the door, I said, you can hang out tonight, and you started shit-talking my brother, I say, bro, I'm going to give you a ride home. I don't think you should be here. That's not an affront to someone's sovereignty or free speech. It's like the worst thing that happened to you is I give you a ride home. I'm going to cry. She's going home. What's the problem? Home's nice. She was here conditionally. We said, hey, we kind of think you're being a dick. We're going to give you a ride home. That's it.
I mean, when I get a ride home,
Kent State,
6 guys don't normally shove me into a van, and then my family doesn't know where I am. That's
How about you're at a bar and you're acting out in some way, and they say, listen, buddy,
do you feel
security throws you out of the bar?
Do you feel this woman was acting out? Do you think she was acting inappropriately? Do you think that she was acting?
I've already told you I did not.
Okay, so then how are you justifying what happened?
I don't think
it's legally narrow that it can happen. Therefore, it's good.
I don't think you know how to separate. I just don't think you know how to comprehend the separation between. I have no issue with a woman making her argument. I think it was absurd to claim she's adhering to Hamas because she's critical of Israel, but her visa is conditional, and it is the authority of these United States and the Secretary of State to revoke that. So it's okay, right? Trump won the popular vote. This is the agenda.
Man. Sorry, man. This is the hump that I can't get over.
Clearly.
You don't have any problem with what she actually did, right? But Trump and Rubio had the narrow legal ability to do it.
You're not following.
Do you agree with their decision to do it?
I do not. I think there is a net negative, to a degree, that foreigners come to this country to dictate our politics. Canadian, British,
dictator politics, or just give their opinion.
I wonder what Tim has to say about the Israel lobby then. I genuinely, I don't know, because I don't watch his coverage. Maybe he does call out AIPAC and everything, but I'd be curious to hear what his take is on that, because he thinks a student at Tufts University co-writing an op-ed critical of a foreign government is a violation of American sovereignty. But Presumably, I'd say he doesn't think that it's wild that we have hundreds of millions of dollars that are poured into U.S. elections from an explicitly pro-Israel PAC that's acting on behalf of a foreign government. Is that a violation of American sovereignty? The fact that a vast majority of our government seems to be working on behalf of what's in the best interest of Israel and not what's in the best interest of the American people? Curious to get his take on that. He did recently meet with Benjamin Netanyahu, so questionable to say the least, but we can continue.
In the newspaper that's dictating?
Let's all talk about language. To come here and advocate for policies of the American people.
So you feel that foreign nationals of all kinds, when they're in the United States, should never speak about our politics ever, upon pain of legal punishment. That is a position that you have about America generally.
Did they agree to it? When they applied for the visa under the INA, did they agree to those terms?
I don't know.
The answer is yes, they did. It clearly states when you're coming here on a condition, you can't do certain things. It literally says you won't protest. And we still would allow them to hold a sign up or something. But maybe if they didn't.
But apparently we don't allow them to hold a sign up. So I'm not asking about what they agreed to. I'm not asking about the legal justification.
Don't agree to things.
Do you, Tim Pool, believe that as a moral issue, as a practical issue? Do you think that America should be a country in which every foreign national in the country should feel that they should never speak about American politics under pain of legal punishment?
No.
You don't think that you don't agree with that?
You presented me an absolute. Right? You gave me the extreme end.
Okay, so Ramesa Ozturk, I think, is a really illustrative example because it was such a mild
understand
version.
That they've made an agreement upon entering this country that if they are in violation of the terms of their visa, it may be revoked. If they come here with the intent of advocating against U.S. foreign policy, that is a consequence. Speech has consequences. I think we're getting hung up on the issue that I've clearly answered, and I understand maybe you don't understand, but we can.
I think I've pinned you down well enough that like you just like really have a much smaller view of free speech than I do, and I think a lot of Americans do. I think it's a change to the American spirit. I think it makes the country smaller. It's a shittier country to live in. Is a country where people live in fear of what they say when they're here on a student.
They always
visa.
have.
Yeah, and that's bad. So, it's bad to live in fear of saying shit.
This is not. You see, this is here's the issue. I suppose
your whole bullshit culture baiting thing about the Islam stuff in England. If what you say is true, and it may be, I don't know because I don't really follow that as you do.
Never.
But I think it's bad about that country.
You would never go to the UK and do those things.
If I were now, look, I don't know of the policies of which you speak, okay? But if I were to be in England and I were to make a joke on their stage and I were to be put into a van and removed from a country, I would say this is a bad thing about England, and I think that the country sucks, and I think that they should change it, and I don't think people should go there anymore, and that sucks for them and it sucks for us.
You wouldn't make a joke about Islam in the United States. You wouldn't.
Okay, sure. What's that meant to prove?
You don't actually believe in free speech. You fear the consequences.
Because I don't make a joke about the topic that you demand me to?
Because this topic in
I don't believe in free
has resulted
speech?
in people like at Charlie Hebdo getting murdered.
Yeah, that's bad. It's bad that they were murdered.
South Park tried just showing Muhammad, and Comedy Central wouldn't let him do it.
Yeah, that's bad.
So let's see you stand up for that value and come out and make a joke about it.
I've stood up about free speech plenty of times. What are you talking about?
Take it to the next level, brother.
Okay.
How about we do this? You believe in free speech?
Dude, this is what you do when you've lost an argument. Is that you just jump to this? You just
jump
to this? What? What did you say?
You brought it up.
What did I? Oh, the Islam piece of it. Yeah. No.
And now I'm continuing the conversation, and you're derailing into you must have lost the argument.
No, because
brother,
because
let's stand up for South Park, for Matt Stone and Trey Parker.
Yeah, I stand up for them.
So go on stage and show a big picture of Muhammad.
I'm sorry. What the thing that you're doing?
Stand up for free speech, brother. Do it.
So
I'll do it with you.
So you're demanding me to go on stage and
prove
do something specific, and unless I do, I'm a coward.
I'm saying
this is a bizarre rhetorical move. This is a bizarre rhetorical move.
I didn't call you a coward. I said prove you care about free speech.
Yeah,
do something that creates real risk to your person for free speech.
Yeah, I speak about shit all the time, dude. I'm happy to live in America where the things I say don't create real risk to my person. In fact, if I were to say the things that you're saying, I would not be creating real risk to my person.
You don't think so?
I do not think so.
Then why not just do it? Prove me wrong.
Because I don't have anything in particular to say about those topics.
Just put a picture of Muhammad up and say praise be.
Okay, now this is, I guess, where it just gets completely derailed, and I don't even know what the fuck kind of point that Tim is trying to make here. I guess he's trying to say that if you were to do a comedy set and you make fun of Islam in a particular way, or you put up a depiction of Muhammad, then there are going to be some Muslims from around the world or around the country who might come after you, and that's a threat to your person for something that you said. This is all completely irrelevant to what the conversation is about. The conversation right now is, first of all, about government restriction of free speech. And again, in the specific examples they're referring to here, we have Rumeja Öztürk being arrested, black-bagged by unmarked agents of the state, thrown into an unmarked car, detained for weeks on end, and then presumably attempting to throw her out of the country for writing an op-ed. That's what we're talking about here. Not engaging in violence, not trying to topple the US government or anything even remotely extreme, but taking the position that the majority of American people have, that what Israel is doing and the US helping to facilitate what they're doing is bad, and we should try to end our complicity in that. That's what the scope of this conversation in real practical terms, in reality, is actually about. And Tim is trying to jump to the restrictions on free speech in regards to Islam in the United Kingdom, and you wouldn't say this in a comedy set, because he can't talk about the actual issue. And even after watching, 20 minutes of that back and forth, I'm still not really entirely sure what his position on this is, because at some points he's saying her speaking out is a violation of American sovereignty. At other points, he's saying, well, the Trump administration technically, on a very slim legal justification, has the ability to do it, and so therefore they can do it. On other circumstances, he's saying, I don't really care about it, and so who gives a shit? I mean, it's just a totally incoherent position for somebody who claims to be pro-free speech, who claims to be anti-war, who claims to be America first. This is incoherence to its fullest that we're witnessing here from Tim Pool. Now, again, in terms of the legal justification, and I'll leave you guys off with this. Here from the New York Times on just how shady all of this is, right? Their headline is, "The law in the Mahmoud Khalil case was once struck down by Trump's sister." So this is what Tim Pool and Donald Trump are using to justify what they're doing to these students. They say, the 1952 law under which the Trump administration seeks to deport Mahmoud Khalil, a lawful permanent resident who helped organize protests at Columbia University, is largely untested. Largely, but not entirely. It was ruled unconstitutional in 1996 by President Trump's sister. When Judge Barry considered the 1952 law, which the Trump administration has said will play a major role in its deportation plans, she asked whether it could be squared with the Constitution. The answer, she wrote, is a ringing no. At the time, Judge Barry was a federal trial judge, and so her ruling did not establish a precedent binding on other courts. In any event, an appeals court later reversed her decision, though on grounds unrelated to its substance. They say it remains the most thorough judicial examination of the constitutionality of this law, and other judges may find its reasoning persuasive. So here was her reasoning. The case involved Mario Ruiz Massieu, a former Mexican official whom the Clinton administration sought to deport to Mexico. The Secretary of State at the time, Warren M. Christopher, told Mr. Ruiz Massieu precisely the same thing that Marco Rubio is now telling Mahmoud Khalil. Quote, "Your presence or activities in the United States would have potentially serious adverse foreign policy consequences for the United States." Now, keep in mind just how utterly absurd this kind of an argument is, both in terms of the fact that they're trying to pull from this 1950s era law to use this in the first place, how much of a stretch that is just in and of itself, but that you are trying to make the argument that Mahmoud Khalil's presence in the United States is somehow going to have serious adverse foreign policy consequences for the U.S. How? In what way? Because he was protesting on a U.S. university campus against a genocide. That's going to lead to serious adverse foreign policy consequences. It's like, even if you think that this law is applicable or it's a fair law to use, if you get into the specifics, it still wouldn't even apply to people like Rumeja or people like Mahmoud Khalil. We're arguing that a single op-ed at Tufts University is going to have massive implications for U.S. foreign policy. The fuck are we talking about? It's insanity. Now, they continue. They say that sentence was chilling, wrote Judge Barry, who was appointed to the federal district court in New Jersey by Ronald Reagan, so we're not talking about a liberal judge here, after lobbying by Mr. Trump's former mentor and fixer, Roy Cohn. The law, she wrote, quote, confers upon a single individual, the Secretary of State, the unfettered and unreviewable discretion to deport any alien lawfully within the United States if that person's mere presence here would impact in some unexplained way the foreign policy interests of the United States. She says that violated the Constitution in at least two ways. First, she said it was too vague to give notice to the people subject to it of what conduct is prohibited. And that's important because if you are a foreign national who's here in the country, you don't know what are the restrictions on what you can say. Is it just a blanket ban on any foreign nationals here in the country from discussing politics in any way, shape, or form? Or is it specifically on Israel? Can you just not say something about Israel? Because I highly doubt that if Mahmoud Khalil or Rumeja Öztürk were talking about Saudi Arabia or they were talking about Iran in a negative light, that they would be getting thrown out of the country. So it's all completely arbitrary. And this is all designed to create a climate of fear in the United States that the Trump administration, as part of Project 2025, is trying to cultivate. They are trying to make it so that anybody who's here in this country, either as an American citizen or as a foreign national, is terrified to speak out against what the United States is doing in regards to Israel, right? This is the goal of this. And as I finish off here, reminder, this is not just applying to foreign nationals. There are also U.S. citizens who are having their lives upended as a result of the Trump administration's policies. We just watched one of the final speeches at graduation from an NYU student who was criticizing, and they didn't even use the word Israel in their speech, but they were criticizing the genocide, and they had their diploma halted. They had their diploma taken away after going through the entirety of their schooling process and graduating near the top of their class. Diploma revoked because they dared to criticize the genocide that our government and their university is complicit in, right? And this is an American citizen that we're talking about here. So it's not just foreign nationals, it's also American citizens, students across the country who are having their lives upended as a result of the authoritarian, fascist, anti-free speech crackdown from the Trump administration. So I'll leave you guys off with that. Bizarre debate here. I don't know much about Tim Pool. Maybe you guys can tell me in the comments down below if this is a normal kind of position that he usually stakes out, but total and complete incoherence.
Politic guy has the best politics. Believe me, no one does it like him. Believe me, everyone is saying